Welcome back to Candlestick Park, everybody. Tonight it's the first of 3 between the Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants, the first of 12, the longest homestand of the year for the Giants. Well, a very special edition of our scouting report tonight. Joining me, Gordon Edes of the Los Angeles Times, along with George Shirk of the San Jose Mercury News. Well, Gordon, you guys came out of Houston, you dropped 3 of 4, didn't give the Giants any help at all, and the first question Giant fans want to know is, why not?
I guess it's a pretty simple answer, Phil. The Dodgers aren't playing very good ball right now. They may not be a very good team. With 47 games left, they're still under 500 ball club. I wouldn't be looking to the Dodgers for too much help if you want to win this race, Phil.
Now the Dodgers have lost 6 of their last 8 ball games, a situation where really the fielding, which has been atrocious all year, has gone south again. You started to get some pitching after the All-Star break. Is that breaking down also, Gordon?
No, I wouldn't say the pitching's been breaking down. Now when you had Hershiser and Valenzuela taking 2 hitters into the 8th inning in each of the last 2 nights, Hershiser was lucky that the Astros, that was the one game the Astros didn't pull out in the 9th inning. He had won 5-3. Fernando lost the game. By all rights, he should have won Thursday night, the 2-0 lead, and Astros scored 3. But that's what the Astros have been doing all year, and the Dodgers cooperate nicely by making the mistakes that make a team able to win.
Also joining us, George Shirk of the San Jose News. And George, the San Francisco Giants, a couple of opportunities to pick up some ground on the Astros, but just can't win the game when the Astros decide to lose a ball game.
Well, yeah, and it also was a factor that Chris Brown wasn't involved in either of those things. And as everybody knows, the Giants need Chris Brown to play. But let's go back to the Dodgers for just a moment. You know, it's just not it's not fair to say they're not playing good ball. This team, the Dodgers, are playing weird baseball. I mean, there's zany baseball, crazy baseball. The other night, Charlie Kerfeld's on the mound for the Stros. He's got a lead, 2-1, no problem. He's standing on the mound. Steve Sachs gets a hit. He's standing on first. You know, what does he do? Kerfeld goes to the stretch, looks out into the stands where there's a purple beach ball bouncing around. And it's one of these things where the beach ball's bouncing around, the crowd's kind of getting into it, and even the dugouts are kind of getting into it. Kerfeld thinks, you know, if everybody's getting into it, I'll bet Sachs is getting into it too. Turned around, threw Sachs out by 2 feet, no problem at all. The Dodgers are out of an inning, and that's just the way the Dodgers are playing the whole year, and it's hysterical.
Well, you're talking about the Astros. Here's a ball club that they finally get out of the Astrodome. Seems like the first time all year that they've been away from home. They go into Atlanta, win tonight 3-0, and situation where if you're going to put pressure on the guys ahead of you, you got to keep winning. And tonight the Giants are going to have to find a way to beat the Dodgers.
Oh, yeah, and it's always trying to find a way against the Dodgers, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, those guys are, what, 9 games back, you know, and it's still the Dodgers. And so, yeah, they're going to have to try to find a way, and, yeah, it'll be interesting, and it'll probably be zany and kooky, and who knows what's going to happen. But it's the Dodgers and the Giants. It's like the Sixers and the Celtics. It's, you know, who knows what's going to happen? I have no clue.
You know, that brings up an interesting point, George. I was talking to Willie McCovey just a few moments ago, and Gordon, he was saying that for the first time in many, many years, this series going into the dog days, the Giants and the Dodgers, actually means something this year.
Well, brought up the same subject to Lasorda before the game, and he said, hey, when we were up here in April and they were in last place, it's still, as far as the people in the stick are concerned, it means something. But let's talk about the Giants for just a second now, Phil. I mean, we're talking to... Mr. Shirk said the Dodgers have been playing weird baseball. I mean, we're talking about a town where the last time the Dodgers were in, they were throwing chicken bones at the bullpen here. Kenny Howell and Tom Niedenfuhr and company. All the fog games we've had here. And as for when the Dodgers look at the Giants, one name comes to mind: Candy Maldonado. Now, I mean, Candy Maldonado may be having the season of his life this year, but he's still Candy Maldonado.
Which means what?
Which means that you're talking about a guy that in L.A., Al Campanis touted as the next Roberto Clemente, and he unloaded him and KO'd him last winter like Roberto Duran. I mean, it was see you later, Candy. And the Dodgers look at the stat sheets and see that Maldonado's the only guy in double figures in home runs in this club, and believe me, I'm not taking anything away from Maldonado. He's had a terrific season, but they're wondering if the Giants are doing it with mirrors. And when you go beyond the hitting, you look at the pitching. And Bill Madlock said to me before the game, I don't even know who's in the Giants rotation. Who are these guys?
I don't know either anymore. You know, I really don't know. 52 roster changes on the Giants this year. We got Mulholland down. We got Minton up. We got Mason on the disabled list. I cover this team every day. And I walk in there and I don't know who they are anymore.
Do you think Maldonado is having a career year?
I have no idea. Yeah, he maybe. I mean, certainly it's the best year he's ever had, but it's the most he's ever played, too.
You know, you talk about this Giants ball club, and Gordon brings up an interesting point. And you talk about the Dodgers being a weird club. Well, the Giants, George, since the All-Star break, you know, you mentioned it a moment ago before we went on. The first day after the break, knocking off the Cubs, the Astros lose. We take a 2-game lead over the Astros, and since then, really, it has been, you can't even say leveling off. It has been sort of a downhill slide.
Yeah, it really has. A lot of that is because of injury. A lot of that is because of playing on the road.
Sure it has.
A lot of it is playing good teams. But I'm shocked that Roger Craig is keeping them in it. I really do think it is Roger Craig. And for the people who accuse the Giants of winning with mirrors, I think they're absolutely right. This team, with the exception of possibly Chris Brown, really doesn't have what you'd call talent.
What about Will Clark? I mean, earlier in the year, you were talking about Will Clark, and you and I were discussing on airplanes and bus trips, Will Clark and the nucleus of this Giants ball club, but they spent so much time without Will.
Yeah, and that was a factor.
Sure was.
I mean, Will is Zeus, as far as I'm concerned. I think he's the Rookie of the Year even now. I mean, he hits the ball, hits it line drive, drop in, no problem. Pretty heady baseball player, knows what he's doing. He's smart, looks like a veteran. Okay, so he missed 2 months. He's still the Rookie of the Year.
Excuse me if I might interrupt. Has George heard of Todd Worrell, relief pitcher, St. Louis Cardinals, rookie? The last time I checked, the San Jose Mercury wasn't hiring homers, was it?
You know, Gordon, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Dodgers and about their propensity for coughing the ball up on routine ground balls, and I'm sure you've seen it all year long. What has been the problem with this team over the past couple of years?
Well, actually, Phil, it's nothing new. It's no secret that the Dodgers have never been a particularly outstanding defensive team, even when they had the great infield of Garvey, Lopes, Russell, Say together. I mean, they'd be the first to admit that they weren't an exceptional defensive ball club, but they always had the guys who were hit 30 home runs a year. Hey, a 3-run home run can cover up a lot of mistakes. It's just now, with the injuries this club has, where you don't have the Guerrero in the lineup, you don't have Mike Marshall because of his back, hasn't been playing. Franklin Stubbs, he's a young kid. You can't really expect him to be carrying the load that's been thrust upon him now. Now the errors are that much more glaring, and they cost ball games, and that's why the Dodgers have lost so many close games. That's why they've lost so many games on the road.
Your team's down after blowing the games in Houston. The Giants are down after their team blew those games in Houston.
Well, but there's nothing that the Giants can do about that. There's absolutely nothing. They've got to forget about Houston and play their game, and play their game with hit and runs, stolen bases, clutch hits, and good pitching. They're just going to have to forget everything about Houston. If I were Houston, I'd probably get a little worried about the Giants, actually, particularly the 2 games down in Atlanta when the Giants come back and post the numbers in the 9th inning to win, 9th and 10th innings to win in Atlanta, and then come back from behind and win a 13-4 game in Cincinnati. If I were the Astros, I'd say, wow.
You know, tonight, George, we look at Mike Krukow, and up until a couple of weeks ago, you had to figure you had 2 real solid starters, actually 3, Vida Blue, Mike Krukow, and Mike LaCosse. And now that LaCosse has started to struggle a little bit, you got to look to this guy right here to get this homestand off on a winning note.
Yeah, although I don't really buy the whole idea that LaCosse has struggled. I mean, he's had 2 bad games, and then 2 games when the Giants didn't score any runs. Now the Giants are starting to come back. They've got Clark back at first base, and then really a pretty nice groove. Dan Gladden is really hot right now. He's in a nice groove. Chile is slumping. Somebody's always slumping. Uribe, no bat, but he may discover it. But with those guys starting to come back together again to the kind of team that we thought maybe they'd be when we left camp last April. This has been 2.5, 3 months of really putting together a jigsaw puzzle for Roger Craig. Now they're getting ready for September. It's starting to look like the Giants again, and we'll see what happens.
And as Stretch said a few moments ago, if you can't get up for the Dodgers, you shouldn't be in uniform in that home clubhouse.
Well, I wouldn't be here tonight, but, you know.
You know, it's interesting. Normally, in the middle of August, you wouldn't be inclined to write off a team that's only 9 games out like the Dodgers are. But the thing that has to be emphasized is the fact the Dodgers at this stage are several games under 500, and they're an incomplete lineup. Madlock said he doesn't know what kind of team the Dodgers have this season. He hasn't played with them all year. He says he hopes that he's in that lineup once before he retires, where you have Guerrero, Marshall, Stubbs, Madlock in there, Kenny Landreau all at the same time. I think the Dodgers certainly are very aware of the long shot prospects of them winning now, but they also come in here knowing they can do some serious hurt to the Giants, and they like nothing better. 3 games in the stick.
Do you honestly feel the Dodgers can still make a run, Gordon, with the team that they're putting on the field day in and day out now?
No, I don't. And I think the Astros are only concerned about the Giants at this stage.
Gordon Edes, George Shirk, thanks for joining us on this special edition of the Scouting Report. I'm Phil Stone. That's our Giants pregame show for tonight. Don't go away. The Giants and the Dodgers in the first of 3 coming up next.
It'd be foolish to say there's no pressure involved. It's pressure on JB and myself to come in and make some type of positive impact. You know, it's pressure on the organization to continue to win. I mean, it's definite pressure when you make a trade of that magnitude.
They're a team now that's expected to win. They have to win, and sometimes that could create even more pressure than they know how to deal with.
They traded for the present, for a chance to run at the title. I don't think Jesus Christ and the 12 Apostles can beat the Lakers right now, but they do.
Maybe the Rockets and the rest of the NBA can go back to the Old Testament for inspiration. Remember what happened to Goliath.
We invited 2 gentlemen here who have followed the Warriors from start to finish this year on the outside. Jeff Chapman, Oakland Tribune, and George, I'm in leather, Shirk of the Oakland Tribune.
That's the nickname I wanted.
And you've got it.
All right.
Because you're in the jacket, we'll ask you about the shoes. What's the deal with the Warriors' all-black shoes today?
Isn't that preposterous? Well, it is.
What's old Celtic stuff? Maybe Nelson?
No, it's not old Celtic stuff. It's Paul Mokeski, of all people.
Okay.
It was his idea. He did it with Cleveland last year. You remember Big Moke was with the Cavaliers last year. They went into a first round against Philadelphia. And he figured it was kind of a nice unity thing to make everybody look really, really dreadful.
Okay.
Well, he didn't say that, but I think that's what's going on. Right. Anyway, so now it's the Warriors, and it's significant. I think that the Cavaliers lost that series.
All right, so we can.
But anyway, no, it's just a team.
A unity thing. Jeff, yeah. I'll play the devil's advocate here. Warriors had a good regular season, but off watching them over a full schedule, they appear to be a one playoff round and out team. You tell me why they're going to have a chance against San Antonio.
Okay, well, I'll tell you that 2 years ago they went into the playoffs against Utah, having lost 6 in a row, and everyone said, well, this is going to be short and sweet. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they swept the Jazz after beating the Jazz 2 years previous. This year, 5 games ago, you would have said the Warriors have no chance. First round, doesn't matter, be it Utah, be it Lakers, be it Portland, doesn't matter. But, you know, they've given everyone an idea now that maybe, just maybe, they can win a game in San Antonio. Okay. I think it's going to go 5 games. I think we're going back to San Antonio for a Game 5 next Sunday.
You really do? George,
really
real
do.
quick, do you think it's a 5-game series?
It could be. I never really know with Nelson. The problem, I think in a week from now, we may really regret that they're not playing Utah, because Utah runs a pattern offense, and you can do stuff against a pattern offense. San Antonio runs a lot of motion. They do it very well. They run a fast break very well, so it limits the coaching you can do against that kind of a team. But, you know, I've followed Nelson for a lot of years, and I give no, you know, the Warriors they could lose, but Nelly could pull one out, too. I don't know.
Nelson, everybody will agree, is a terrific guy.
He screws people up.
No, yeah, but that's what I was going to say. But how do you guys get information? Because he doesn't say anything. I mean, you really have to dig, huh? In fact, didn't you dig? I'll go with you, Jeff. Didn't you tell the story you found something in a garbage can on the road?
Oh, well, that was...
I mean, that's a lot of... I'm not... What class?
That's really digging, huh?
Yeah, no, but tell that story real quick, if you can, where you found information.
I was in Portland. A hotel maid knocked on my door, said, are you with the Golden State Warriors? And rather than try to explain...
That was definitely a hotel maid.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
and, you know, she's asking me... Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, Mark.
No.
She's saying, are you with the Warriors? And I said, well, sort of, kind of. And I'm thinking, do I have the time to explain to this woman that I'm sort of kind of with the Warriors, but I don't work for the Warriors? She, you know, she was barely, it was broken English.
Okay.
And she said, well, I have something, you know, it's lost. And I said, oh, I'll take it. I'll figure I'll give it to the right person. It's the Warriors scouting report on all the Blazers players. So I pondered all day, what am I going to do with this? You know, this player by player, tendencies, ways to break them down, how we're going to beat them, this and that. And I went to Nelly after the game and I said, you know, you're playing Portland again here in 2 days. I'd like to run this.
Jeez.
And he said, okay, shocked the heck out of me.
So I love that. You know, the scouting reports too are great. It's kind of like along the lines of, watch out for Drexler. He can really score.
Take me inside Nelson's head. What does he really think? If Nelson could tell you tonight, he's sitting around with his buddies and they say, Don, you really have a good chance against San Antonio. What are you going to do?
You got to push Robinson off the blocks.
With who?
With anybody, with everybody, with Mokeski, with all the big guys. Just gang up on him, move him off the blocks. You're not going to shut him down. He's too good for that. He'll get his 32 and 15. But you cut down on the percentage shooting and you take away a little bit of his rebounding in big situations.
Jeff thinks the series is going back then to San Antonio for Game 5 a week from today. Real quick, though, NBA champion will be Jeff.
Well, I said Chicago and Phoenix at the beginning of the year with the Bulls winning the title, and Phoenix is still in it, so I'm still picking the Chicago-Phoenix final.
George?
Portland. Portland.
Okay.
Of course, Portland.
Okay, as we wrap up here, I'll ask you a question, but George came down tonight with your girlfriend also in leather. It's the first couple.
Well, what would you ride on a motorcycle?
I know.
You know, what, a nice little cotton shirt? Something with a nice little
Look at Jeff. Jeff and I are ready to go to Sunday school, and you show up in leather. You want to bring up your friend as we wrap up?
Come on, Jeannie, come on.
Jeannie, come on up, just so people years from now will say when Shirk and Chapman were on, yes, one of them brought their girlfriend in leather. Is George as much fun as he appears, Jeannie, on television and when he writes?
This is his persona all the time.
Mr. Leather. And you are the...
Jeez, no, wait a minute.
Is it competitive between you two? By the way, do you fight for stories?
No.
No.
That's a
No,
lot.
we really...
That's a lot. The guy across the street has a better show than me. I'm out.
I'll tell you what, though. Right. I pick up the Chronicle first thing every morning to see what George wrote.
Jeannie?
I see the Oakland Tribune once a month or so.
All right, once a month.
That's all you need.
On that positive note, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, George. And Jeannie, thank you, and the leather jacket. And we'll take a break here. When we return, the A's troubles continue, and a rookie named Decker gets the Giants even.
Halftime, the Warriors, 58-54. Well, the big news today, what's going on with the Los Angeles / Oakland Raiders? George Shirk visited with Keith. He's a writer from the Bay Area.
George, we had a big announcement by Al Davis today. Evidently, the Los Angeles Raiders are moving back to Oakland. Is that a surprise move to you?
Well, you know, with Al Davis, everything is a surprise to me and nothing is a surprise to me. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The guys are really an enigma. And he's a fascinating man to watch, and so I never have any idea what Al's going to do.
I don't think anybody has any idea what he's going to do, and I'm wondering, has the Bay Area lost any of its affection for Al and the Raiders because he moved the first time?
I think so. I really do. I think that Al's credibility has gone down a little bit, but I'm not sure whether that has so much to do with Al Davis or whether the fortunes of the team. Fans are a very fickle bunch, as you know, and they're good, but they tend to rise and fall with the success of the team. I think if the Raiders right now were at the top of the NFL and so on, that there would be no question, but that the Bay Area would be 100% behind them coming back. Now with the 49ers on top of everything, and the Raiders down, it's a very interesting mix, and it'd be a very difficult thing for me to answer, Keith, to tell you the truth.
What was the reason that Al moved the team in the first place?
Well, he felt that he couldn't get the concessions, you know, where the big money was in skyboxes at the Oakland Coliseum, and so he moved down here. And thought he got what he wanted down here. Now, Oakland is promising to remodel the Coliseum, put in the skyboxes, make the concessions, and promise him X amount of money, X amount of ticket revenue, guaranteed ticket revenue, and so now he can come back.
Now, there's a big vote that's supposed to take place tonight that's supposed to confirm this move. What are the particulars as far as that vote goes?
Well, I'm not really sure exactly on the inside politics of all this, but basically it's a clear-cut, straightforward vote on a bond issue. Oakland needs to float a bond issue to raise the money to pay Al Davis and the Raiders what they need or what they're demanding, and Oakland is apparently willing to do that, from what I understand. But apparently it's not in the bag. We'll just have to see. Mayor Wilson seems to think it's in the bag. Al Davis seems to think it's in the bag, but I know politics, and you know politics. Nothing's in the bag until it's over.
You know, when the Raiders came down here, I'm not sure if there was ever a real match down here with the players and the fans the way there was in Oakland. What was it about the Oakland fans and the Raider players that match so well?
Oh, well, you have to really get behind the psychology of Oakland, California for that. Oakland's a tough town. It's a great town. But it's got a kind of a, you know, it lives in the shadow of elegant San Francisco. It's a fighting town. I use the word thug town, but not in the sense that, you know, to put down Oakland, but in the sense that it's a big, brawling town. This is the town where Billy Martin came from. But, you know, this is what Billy Martin's all about. Oakland's got a lot of, I don't know, machismo, I guess in a sense. And so the Raiders were perfect. I mean, they were outlaws. Oakland's, that's where Hell's Angels are. You know, that's where Sonny Barger is. That's where the Oakland Raiders are. And, you know, yeah, that's where Jose Canseco is too. So, yeah, it's Oakland, and they don't really care about anybody else. It's fine. And that's the whole thing about the Raiders.
Very interesting. Well, let's turn to
people here in the Bay Area were only able to know Jack for 3 years, but our next speaker was involved in the media in Philadelphia as well and knew Jack there and is now the beat writer for the Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle, George Shirk. George?
I consider myself to be the luckiest writer in the world. And the reason why I'm the luckiest writer in the world was that 10 years ago in Philadelphia, I was young, had never really watched professional basketball, and walked into the 76ers training camp and met Jack McMahon for the first time. He was my teacher in everything, from the game itself to how to live out there on the road. I mean, if anybody's never done it, it's a real different thing out there. It's a different pattern of living. It can be very frustrating, but it's not really. I remember early on in 81, 82, in that neighborhood, standing in a baggage carousel outside in Atlanta, very frustrated. The weather had been awful, the road trip had been awful, the team was losing. My baggage had been lost already once, and I had just about had it, and Jack came up to me and said, she said, wouldn't you like to just have a place to sit down, no telephones, get a good book, some music on your ears? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, jump on the next plane. That's where it is. There's nothing hard about that. And I said, well, yeah, it sounds little, but it's big. It's something that I've learned from, to take it easy, to have fun in this game. It's what this game is all about, is having fun. Writing about it is a blast, because you don't get pinned with the blame if you lose. It's great. Jack also did some things that taught me how to live. Whenever I would have we became close in an odd kind of way to me. He respected me for my humanness and my. If I had problems, I could go to Jack. It didn't have to be basketball problems at all, and he'd listen and advise me. He taught me, as I said, many things. He taught me a healthy disrespect for anything having to do with the Boston Celtics. In the 1982 sixth game, Philadelphia seventh game at Boston Garden, where the Celtics were prohibitive favorites to once again wipe out the 3-1 Philly lead and take the Eastern title. The atmosphere at Boston Garden was ugly and vituperative, and it was scary to be there. It was scary to be standing there by the bench as the game started. Jack walked over to me and said, "This is nothing." He says, "Wait till they start throwing light bulbs." Yeah, he also taught me a lot about loyalty. Loyalty not only to human beings, to organizations, to just this last year we were down in Phoenix and with the Warriors, and one of the writers in a bar the night before had started giving her opinion about what had happened to Gene Shue over with the Clippers, and was critical of Gene Shue. Well, anybody who knows anything about basketball knows that Jack worked with Gene Shue in Philadelphia, and Jack's a nice guy, right? But when he gets his back up, watch out, okay? Just watch out. And he took it for about 5 minutes and then laid into it, because nobody criticizes Gene Shue. By God, nobody does that. I mean, it was important to me. Little things like that. They don't have to be big sermons. Little things that I remember. Well, then there was the Sunday this last spring in Los Angeles, where we were getting ready to watch the Los Angeles Lakers play the Detroit Pistons, and when the news of Jack's death came across, it was appropriate for me to have all those people around in LA. The basketball world condenses during the NBA Finals and the NBA All-Star Game, and now it was condensed here. And the next day, everybody on the staff of my paper was scrambling to get to be the guy to write the story about Jack. It fell to another writer, a columnist. I wrote one anyway. Couldn't help it, and I'd like to read it if I can get through it here. How this goes. When the news of Jack McMahon's death reached the Inglewood Forum just moments before tip-off in Sunday's NBA championship game between the Lakers and the Pistons, most everybody set to scrambling for their favorite Uncle Jack stories. Many people who knew him, and hundreds upon hundreds, can lay claim to that, called him Uncle Jack. Such was McMahon's nature. And the stories, once they started, flowed from the tongues of his friends, one after the other, and endlessly. There was Pat Williams, for instance, who is the general manager now of the expansion Orlando Magic, who, in an effort to explain this outpouring of affection, said of his longtime friend and colleague, Jack McMahon was maybe the most loved and popular person in the history of this league. Williams was the general manager in Philadelphia in the late 70s and early 80s when Jack was busy building an NBA championship through a series of really stunning drafts and trades. These transactions are famous now. How McMahon steered to the 76ers such players as Julius Erving out of the ABA, Darryl Dawkins out of a Florida high school, Bobby Jones out of the Denver Nuggets, Caldwell Jones out of the ABA, Clint Richardson and Maurice Cheeks out of the second round, Andrew Toney out of the first. In fact, it was under Williams that Jack defiantly stuck to his 3 decades of NBA experience and insisted the Sixers gamble a 6th-round pick on current Seattle Sonic Sedale Threatt and risk a 1st-round pick on Auburn's Charles Barkley, now an established NBA star, but at the time a debatable talent. But the shockwave of Jack's death actually had little to do with his superior judgment of talent and basketball itself, both of which will be missed, of course. Rather, said Williams, the Golden State Warriors, for whom McMahon served the past 3 years as an assistant coach and director of player personnel, along with the NBA and the world at large, has lost a particularly special human being. He had nothing but friends, said Williams. He was truly beloved. That's why he was known as Uncle Jack. And then the stories started flowing. And even as the Pistons and the Lakers began to play for the '89 championship, and they kept on flowing even after the game was over, and then into the night, and then into the next day. There were funny stories mostly, naturally, because Jack not only possessed a hard-headedness that yielded strongly worded and often outrageous opinions, he also possessed a natural wit that was honed by constant reading and by countless hours spent in the nation's movie houses. There was a newspaper man from Boston, for instance, who couldn't help telling the story about how McMahon, once asked to assess Elvin Hayes, called him the worst human being ever. And how the NBA's front office had almost blundered into what would have been an accidental and cruel practical joke on McMahon by putting Hayes on Jack's Legends team at last February's All-Star game in Houston. There was a coach from Los Angeles who remembered Jack's coaching days, especially during the year that he took over the job for the then expansion San Diego Rockets. I remember the first time I met him, said Pat Riley, who at the time was fresh out of the University of Kentucky as McMahon's top draft pick. He put me in the backcourt and I had the ball picked away from me 3 straight times. He looked at me and said, "Look, I drafted you first. You might be the worst #1 pick in the NBA." That, said Riley, was Jack. Darryl Dawkins, meanwhile, was really crushed as he recalled his historic vault from high school and poverty onto a roster spot on one of the world's truly great teams. I didn't know if I could go from high school into the pros, he said. I didn't know anything, but Jack said I could, and we got to be good friends. You know, if he told you something, it would come true. No, that wasn't the real Jack at all, said the NBA public relations guy, whose gleeful association with McMahon had spanned the better part of a decade. Jack always said he'd never live to see the day the Detroit Pistons would win a championship, said Brian McIntyre. For others, the stories didn't come easily, for they had to pass through throats that were blocked with the sorrow of his death. It's very hard for me to talk about, said Orlando coach Matty Gukas, who spent 10 years with Jack in the Philadelphia organization. Others did the best they could. There was a television reporter, for example, who found himself sorrowfully distracted during the CBS dinner bash during the finals. He found a measure of peace only when he rose on his own. He recalled his own heritage and rose to toast his fellow Irish American. This is not a sad toast, said Pat O'Brien. This is an Irish toast. And the room erupted in applause. Also in Los Angeles on Sunday was another newspaper man
who a decade ago in Philadelphia broke into covering the NBA by jumping on the fast track of Dr. J's 76ers for the Philadelphia Inquirer. He was an assistant coach for Billy Cunningham then, and so was current Pistons coach Chuck Daly. And Chicago coach Doug Collins was still on the team, and Gukas was doing some broadcasting before he too would become an assistant coach and later a head coach. It was a dizzying ride for anybody who was there. It really was. It ended in a championship in 1983, and it was made joyous and somehow profound by the presence of Jack, who in the process became a father figure to him, and by the presence of Kay McMahon, who was at her husband's side always, and who herself is as charming as he was. Thus, on that Sunday in Los Angeles and on into the next day, the memories all came back about how Jack taught me how to travel, how he taught me fundamental professional basketball and how to enjoy it, and how he'd become my companion at movies, bars, restaurants, in season, off season. And I remembered too how often I've envied the McMahon kids for having the privilege and luck to have had him for a father. So the finals moved into their conclusion in Los Angeles, and the rest of the NBA moves into yet another expansion and another draft, and another regular season is approaching. And Uncle Jack stories will continue to roll. It'll be a long time before they've all been told.